Alrighty, we've got some interesting off-camera action happening right now. Look, apologies for later in the video when my voice is not this clear and this loud. You are about to have to turn your microphone up. Right, interesting things happening off-camera right now. Okay, and it's still happening off-camera right now. It's quite interesting. There's a sleeping cat right beside me. Okay, now why is that interesting? Well, it's interesting because I'm going to make that point of my topic for at least 20 or 30 seconds. Well, I lament the fact that my notes are underneath said animal. That animal's looking really peaceful. And it chose to sit on those notes, unfortunately, after I wrote them not that long ago, or some of them. So, look, I'm a little bit holistic, if you will. I kind of feel that, and I prefer a process where we engage and we're living free in the moment and being in the present, not trying to look to the past, and not trying to, not being out of this frame of existence. And so I just want to be present. I just want to be here with you. And I'm really nervous because I really want my notes. But I had a thought for today's video, and it kind of stemmed out of I couldn't find my trusty little friends, my bits of fruit, and their friends. I'm not a nutter. They're not alive. They would have been alive once, and they've still got life force in them. I don't know if they've gone on living, so I refer to them as friends in the same way I could have a doll or a puppet and surrogate it. And so these right now, these are the people in the room that, in my eyes, no, really not. I'm just talking for the sake of talking, it would seem. But I crunch them, I hold them, I grip them. They're my safety. It's like Linus in Snoopy. It's my safety blanket, if you will. And these give me comfort. They're my comforters. And this morning I couldn't find them. Yeah, they were behind the camera, it turns out. But in that brief moment where I couldn't find them, it amazed me how little time it took for me to just go, you know what, I'll go get two more. And I did, and they're just off camera now. I've got a lemon and an orange. So I traded up. Okay, I'm not a fan of mandarins as much as I am of oranges. Oh dear, I'm a citrusist. I've got isms in the citrus world. Oh no, I thought I was trying to operate without isms, and I've got an ism regarding the family of these little orange fruits. So, I'll get on well with lemons, I'll get on well with oranges, but mandarins, the distant cousin, yeah. Actually, I don't know anything about agriculture, about families of trees and plants, even what to refer to those trees and plant families as. Yeah, I didn't. Biology was probably the science in school I skipped the most. And then turned up at uni years later to try and do a form of study, and they just went, without biology as a background, man, what are you doing here? It's like, oh look, maybe I can sit a test. Yeah, it amazed me how quickly I was willing to dump something that I literally had used video on, even going, that these are aging now. Maybe I should replace them. At the start of another video, I referred to the nature of plasticising them. Or the concept was that if we use something for long enough, and the parts we're using keep wearing out, maybe we need to put some rethink that part and rethink what's going on there. So the case example, because we condition ourselves, we get stuck in a paradigm, and most of these videos are about shifting your paradigms, is that if you constantly refer to the same documents on a computer, and in order to do that, the computer's got to be on, the screen's got to be on. If there's documents served via the internet, you might have your internet on, you might have your wireless on in order to talk with the internet. The amount of electricity, the amount of arguably energy that's being used, right? So energy is arguably, is it, eventually is it matter, is it whatever, I don't know. I just want to show my ignorance with regards to science, but when we consume fossil fuels, because they can be used as energy, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And in the instance of using a computer and having the documents up on it, the cost, there is a cost, right? The electricity comes from somewhere, and therefore there is an inherent cost to our planet, or at some level. Now, we mostly are we just don't see them. We choose not to. They're not on our periphery for a range of reasons. And ultimately, if you're going to refer to the same document, the same page, and it's sort of unvarying, it becomes cheaper for the planet, ultimately, at a resource level, to have printed said document out. So even though most offices are like, oh, we're going digital, we go digital for the nature of, it's a buzzword, and ultimately it is good to have a paperless office, arguably. We want that. We want to transition away from it. And we want to have it as a conscious thing. We're not on the periphery of our minds. We want to be thinking. Is there ways that I can lessen my environmental impact? Perhaps. I don't want to come across as being having an agenda or being is it left wing and right wing branches of politics. I don't want to associate to any one path. I just want to be free to be dynamic in the moment and live in the present and go as needed and do things. But that of course, if you watched my Patreon this morning, it is all about a bit of dogma, a bit of discipline. Oh, sorry, keep the tripod. A bit of discipline. These things help, So I don't want you to think that I'm just loose and just chips go where they may. I keep giving the example of setting out for an island, and you get there if you've got a destination in mind. And quite often, if you've got a system in play and everyone can be trained up to actually operate the boat, you get there. And obviously, that requires discipline, it requires learning, it requires systems and structure. You can't have leaks in your boat because somebody approved a boat that wasn't watertight or capable of doing what it's doing. We trust in our governing bodies, we trust in all these things coming together and holding it all together. So, look, definitely. But regarding the concept of a paperless office, whether it's for economical reasons or economical reasons, if the screen is always on and that same page is up, it's cheaper to print it out because the cost is once, and there's not this perpetual cost then. So really we need an overarching body to weigh up where the costs should be, which are the ones in the long term. It comes down to delaying gratification. What are the better decisions in the long run for everybody? That will work out for society as a whole much better. And we have none of that going on in a world where we need to have quarterly turnovers and we need to show profit right now. And I've seen that in my political systems in my country change over the decades, is that when you could do plays for your country that play out maybe in 10 years' time or over the decades, it works for the people. But when a political term is only 4 years and you've got to convince the people to vote you into office again, the nature of short-term plays isn't doing society any well. So again, I don't want to talk about politics. I just want to talk about how quickly this morning I just dumped these guys, went and got some more ones, just picked them up, just came over. Straight away, this is in my notes, can't get to them, but it straight away made me reflect on a time in history where it might have been the early 80s and airlines and the passenger industry was huge and busing people in the air across the country was a thing. It still is. But what was happening is that there was a downtime for each plane when it got to said destination, said airport. It would generally refuel, turn around and go back again. And the cabin crew, the time to refresh the food on said aircraft, they'd streamlined so many of the processes so that the actual turnaround time in terms of getting the passengers off the plane and getting new passengers on the plane after it had been cleaned and serviced and things that needed to be done was quite quick. They'd gotten the luggage systems down quite quick, and I think they'd gotten to the point where they realised that it's the refuelling that's effectively not allowing us to use our primary assets to generate money for us, right? So they would have calculated how much do we gain by being able to refuel quicker, that we can, the plane's back in the air with however many passengers at X amount of dollars per seat. They crunched the numbers and they came up with the fact that if they can refuel quicker, even if there's a lot of aircraft fuel loss, which is quite expensive, I'd imagine. It's quite a high cost. But they could deem that the cost, it wasn't so high, it wasn't as expensive as not using that plane, right? You could generate more profit if you could get that plane back in the air. So the technology changed, right? There was a desire in their industry to refuel quicker. And there was a lot of loss regarding fuel. And I don't know if the world has restructured itself with the recent economical changes where planes were suddenly flying a lot less. It probably wasn't economical on this basis of, we're probably going to get back to a working society really quickly again. And so there's no point redoing the fueling systems to be more, less lossy, if you will. But it comes down to, we need to trust in the people at the top. And gee, I really wish I had my paperwork, because I had a heading and I could just keep feeding back to that heading. And at the end of each couple of paragraphs that I have to say, I could tie it back into that central theme. And you can say, why don't you remember the central theme? It's like, because I wrote it down, and the minute I wrote it down, my conscious mind said, I don't have to think about that anymore. And I've done a really good job of that. It's me notes and it's on me paper. And I prefer the more natural method of engaging with the camera, so I'm not a fan of using the script, as I found out the last day or so ago. It basically leaves a lot of moments where I look down And they go, yeah, I've already said that. And I felt it was a lot more easier, a lot more natural to say it when it was just coming from my heart and my mind. So, yeah, anyway. We need to have authoritative structures in place that we trust in, that are making decisions for the long run and for the betterment for all of us in the long run, and not just for short-term, popularity contests, if you will. That it is about delaying gratification. It is about making the better decision that will help us for the longer time period. And by delaying gratification, it sounds like that means you don't get what you want right away. Well, that's exactly what delayed gratification is. It means you don't get the thing you want right away. But as long as we're talking about a want, not a need. Okay, needs, a little bit different. Wants, look, if you put it off a day, that might not be the worst thing in the world. And the discipline of learning to delay gratification is one of the most important life skills that we could ever get. And I say this from the book, The Road Less Travelled. And he was a counsellor to a village. And again, I've given this in other videos. He wrote down a lot of the stumbling blocks that he realised that these people that were coming to him that were unhappy, that they mostly had these similar themes in play. And so when he writes this book, and I'm not sure if it's got like quotes from Mother Teresa on the back of it saying it's a gift. If not, it's Power versus Force by Hawkins. One of those books I'm sure has got a quote from Mother Teresa going, "Oh, this is such a gift to humanity." And man, when Mother Teresa is giving a stamp of approval that you've given a bit of a gift, look, I think in your text, in the passion in your words and the reason for why you wrote those words, I think more of us should possibly pay attention. But the book, The Path Less Travelled, The Road Less Travelled, and my apologies, I've bought so many copies of it over the years, but it's a book that you just want to give away and share. And I don't have one on my bookshelf at the moment, and I literally, for the life of me, can't remember if it's one or the other. I know the picture on the front cover intimately, but then it turns out that's an earlier version. Last year, and I couldn't find my copy, and I had a friend going through things, and I'm like, man, you've got to have this book. At the very least, if a couple of people in a partnership read said book, you've got language that is common between you, and you've got concepts that are common between you, and therefore you don't have to waste time arguing the nitty-gritty, because you actually got that as a common basis, and you can actually then just say one word and then, we're talking about that concept, and then run with that for why you would have wanted to have brought that up in conversation. And that's the whole purpose of these videos, is just to introduce little nuggets. So we've got some underlying common ground that we're working from when I try to pitch the bigger paradigm, and I know the bigger paradigm is being pitched. And look, I've got to admit, I probably sent off to as many politicians in my local area as I could find yesterday, with an invite to see me in a public speaking role coming up. So that's me working out there. Why am I talking about commonality and common ground? Yeah, it would be good if a lot of the precepts and a lot of the fundamentals for which I think are important for a vision or a paradigm change, if they're in the mindset of the people that I'm working with, then we all work from that common ground. We're much more effective for it. But if we get caught up trying to say, oh, yep, page 1, paragraph 3, yep, and everyone in the class has to keep, for the newbie student that hasn't studied their text or didn't do their homework, we all slow down, we all get caught out. We don't want that. We want to go forward as quickly as we can. So these videos that don't go forward as quickly as they can, they're very consistent. The pace of time going forward, and the pace of my text, or the pace of the important concepts that I introduce, probably fairly inconsistent. So I always see anyone who's watching these, it's a labour of love. You're giving up your time, things that you could be doing elsewhere. Am I causing a disconnect? Am I making you remember that you got water boiling on the stove, you're making a cup of coffee or tea? Yeah, okay. Maybe just did you a favour. 3 other people just disconnected from the video and went, man, too slow. And I'm pretty confident swiping isn't the YouTube platform. I'm sure it exists in different formats and different products, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I've never used a product where I can swipe right or swipe left, but it seems like such a fun thing. I mean, humans, we like to engage with stuff, and it's such in your play school, anything you can do in the playground. There's business books that are written about everything I need to learn about business. I learned in preschool, primary school. And that's true. A lot of your social reactions, how to avoid getting beaten by the bully, perhaps. There's a lot of different things that are in play, but Look, just the nature of having passion and having fun and having joy, you know, because I'm going to talk about discipline and heavy things. Yeah, they're not what my heart is filled with. You know, we do disciplinary steps and we delay gratification ultimately for more happiness, right? So the purpose is about happiness, right? The purpose is about having a social construct where we can rely on everybody else operating at the same level. And so, yeah, there's certain qualifiers we need to get there. But yeah, anyway, getting back to, tangenting back to being a kid in preschool and the nature of a swipe left or a swipe right in terms of I want some more of that, or I want some less of that. That seems great. I don't know. I think that's what a great way to communicate with the world. You don't have to learn language, just simple actions. So yeah, stick with me. There might be a second joke maybe in the next 3 hours. Yeah, it'll be random, so pay attention. Right, so we need our governing bodies to not just throw things away because in the short term there's a profit for having a disposable society, if you will. You know, we can make more short-term profits, or you know, we're a better chief executive officer because we showed quarterly profits. And give you an example, highly unethical. This is the way businesses can work, right? This is the nature of when you're going to deliver for quarterly profits, and when everything operates under the current paradigm, everything breaks. And there's lots of ways you can misrepresent the numbers so that it looks like we're going forward. But at the end of the day, we've got to get back to the skill set and the tools available. We need to get back to the fact that we trust our authority figures to be doing the right thing, and not just the right thing in the short term, but also the long term. Because, and just closing down the thread, when the political parties in my country started to operate on four yearly cycles and taking all the long-term plays out of effect, it was detrimental to our country. In fact, it even allowed political parties maybe that weren't doing right by us to show that they looked like they were doing right by us, because by cancelling down some of the long-term projects. And I think one of them was we put ourselves in a debt. You know, we basically worked really hard as a country, and we got rid of so much external debt that we had, so that we weren't going to be paying interest on it. You know, and that's really important to knock them over. And a lot of my pitch to heads of government is a way to make a pool of money for all countries. Just to get these economical crises that a lot of countries might be independently going through right now, is to deal with that. You know, and it stops countries needing to go to war. It stops a lot of the anger in the world, a lot of stress in the world, because we need to prop up a lot of our society. And I gave the example earlier that our country just flooded the entire market with money, and by everyone spending money in their local economy, that money went around and around and around and around and around. And I think Russell Brand gave a great video on the economics. And you wouldn't think it. A lot of people, I see comments all the time on Russell Brand, which shows I'm a bit of a fan of watching his stuff, maybe. But everyone's like, if 10 years ago, if you'd said to me, I'd be listening to this guy for political advice, I'd call you insane and mad, you know. And everybody, so many people say that. And it's really true, you know. But Russell Brand did this beautiful social. It was for society. You know, it was a video to say, look, this is what happens when you spend your money in your local economy, and it goes around and around and around. Everybody is propped up. You know, if you spend money at the hairdressers to get a haircut, that hairdresser then might spend the money at the butcher's to get food on the way home, and the butcher might spend the money on whatever, and ultimately that money might be supporting the local farmers, the local yeah. So. Let me give an unethical example of how businesses will constantly, in the short term, to make a short-term play, which isn't working out for us. Right? This is the inverse. I've done a video that's all about inverses, but this is just to hammer home that we're not going to find happiness in the inverses, and we do need to trust that the person we put up the top is going to have a little bit of discipline, a little bit of forward-thinkingness, and it might not deliver in that delaying gratification nature. You know, it might not deliver instantaneous what I want today in order to deliver what we want better for tomorrow and forevermore. You know, ideally, if we're doing long-term plays, off the basis that we borrow the planet from our children, from our descendants. You know, like just sort of renting it. You know, it'd be nice if we could leave it just as good as we found it, perhaps. So look, I worked for a little business, and I won't give the name of it, and I really doubt that these 1, 2, or 3 people that ran said business will watch this video. They just don't seem like the types. But they all came from a little coastal town, and we were inland. We were in this beautiful national park. We had accommodation in this beautiful national park, and it was truly beautiful. It was I think we had 26 acres, 26 acres. I wouldn't have been using hectares as a description, but 26 acres maybe. It was, I know this because it was my job. I started lowest paid position I've ever worked in my life. It was the best job I've ever had, I promise you. And I was a receptionist, in a holiday village, right? So all the people I was engaging with daily were the sort of people who took holidays, right? So people were coming quite happy because everyone started the holiday. It was my job to check them in and give them keys. Or, quite often there was they'd already had an experience with me on the phone when booking their holiday. So, I love being a bit of front of house with that. And probably a bit of an issue for my employers because they kept trying to promote me. And I was just really happy just doing the peon role at the front of house. It's getting paid the lowest hourly rate I'd ever had. And I didn't see it that way. It was literally because I'd go to work each week and it was just such a great time working that at the end of the week I'd just be like, wow, I get paid for this. I got that much money for doing that. It felt like money for nothing. I felt like I was getting so much money. And that's why I am all about pitching a concept where we work happily, because I know we can create that situation where everyone feels really happy in their workplace, even if they're doing jobs that aren't particularly attractive. You just remunerate that part of the job a lot more. It's like, oh yeah, cool. For that hour I elected to doing that, yeah, that's because I elected to do it. I learned that skill set to do that because I knew that that's a really great way to sort of conceptually pay off any potential advancement I've been given. I might upgrade my house to a bigger mansion down the track, just as a way of saying to people, yeah, I took some of the less savoury jobs on the way of getting here. I overtook you quicker to get this dwelling. So, we as humans need to have ego releases, and so you've got to nurture that at all sorts of levels, but ideally in fun ways, in ways that are a little bit more about joy, I guess. But anyway, getting back to this holiday village, one of the promotions I was given was security guard, night watchman, and so I'd have to walk 26 acres, do laps, and do it all the time, arguably. A fair bit during the night, and that meant just locking up the camp kitchens and stuff. So we had different areas. We did have a camping zone, arguably, but we had a lot of bungalows, if you will. They were almost like demountables. I think some of them were just caravans, or cabins as we call them. And in that role, I watched the way that they generated profits. Right, so while they were basically running this business into the ground, and they liked going out and having great meals on town and drinking and whatnot. So that's probably why I got so many promotions. I went from being front of house, and ultimately I was the person who would stay over in one of the hotel rooms overnight. So if anybody checked in late, I could go down and let them in. And these were all the roles they were meant to be doing. This was what they were getting paid the top dollars for. But they were out drinking and whatnot, and they didn't want to have to be half drunk, checking people in, so it was great. I got to do that, and had a lot of really fun time in that job. I really enjoyed it. I guess I was going to say about some of my difficulties, and before I do, I'll just wind down this concept of how you can misrepresent numbers. I can close out that line of thinking, because I probably will tangent and then just move on. They were just selling the assets, and it just meant that quarterly they could show an actual bottom line number that was bigger constantly. Now, obviously, whoever was going over the paperwork probably wasn't looking at the nitty-gritty for how did you generate it, and we've moved on to playing a theme park management game a lot lately, and it's been really wonderful, because I've been trying to express to significant people in my life that you've got this negative belief about yourself, because you've always done these types of jobs, and so you only see yourself this way. And I said, well, in this place you get to be management, and I said, they're never jacking the cost of anything up because they're just too altruistic or something. And I'm like, no, you're management, you've got to make money, right? You literally got to. And I said, look, just tell you what, most of the working conditions you've had as a worker, right? Everyone wants to make more money, and so the workers always get the poorest treatment. Why don't you just do what you want to do? Why don't you just pay the staff a ridiculous amount of money, right? But in order to do that, why don't you raise ticket prices, or why don't you raise park entry costs more than 50 cents, And trying to explain that earlier versions of the game had the word tycoon at the end of them. And there's maybe various reasons they dropped the tycoon off the name of these theme park management games. And I think there might have been a flop product once or twice, and they didn't want new customers that couldn't remember their earlier products as being brilliant to sort of like have that stigma of, oh no, that last product wasn't that much fun or something. So they dropped the name. But ultimately, I mean, the fun of the role is you've got to generate profits here. You're managing. And it's just interesting having two different girlfriends, and no, I'm not dating two different girls, but I believe we're a tribe and a community, and so two different girlfriends each playing this game, and each have very different methods of playing it. And And one of them just being outright able to just go, and having spent a lot of time playing The Sims or other games, it's just like, oh yeah, you know, like, oh yeah, I've got the price of that up, and really comfortable just like jacking the prices up, and the other one just being too like, oh no, like, you know, I'll keep the price nice and low. And it's taken quite a few weeks of playing that game before they've realised, you know what, if I make more money, it empowers me to build more fun rides and do more fun things. And so they've gradually been ameliorating their own internal conscience, if you will, about raising costs. But ultimately, I think where I got through there was to say, look, what if you just paid the staff really well and gave them excellent staff rooms and gave all sorts of social clubs and just up the costs, you know, and put more staff rooms in so they didn't have to walk so far on their breaks to get to them, and, you know, put the money, you know, sure, take the money off those people, but reward these people if you have to. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be, it's not evil necessarily to make money. It's more probably what you do with it, or you know, what is aligned with the methods of making it. I don't know. Look, I don't want to talk about that on this video. Look, a little bit of an egotistical battle here about happiness. I'm just going to sidetrack because I will never ever talk about this job ever again, ever. So I won't put it on the Patreon channel. I won't make it one of my little this is me on the camera moments that we often get. But in relation to the notion of a population that wants to work for a job that makes them happy. Okay, and I've qualified on this video that if you do a job that makes you happy, it feels like you're earning money for nothing, and that there's lots of ways you can change up a person's attitude to the work that they do, and therefore they might actually enjoy working, or you might find subsets of society that otherwise don't work actually being willing to work. There's lots of ways you can change, right? But it's a paradigm shift, and unless we actually see it for the whole vision, we just don't know. But look, let me qualify myself as a difficult person, because I am, and I think there was some taiko drumming, and where I was operating, there was the maintenance people. They're ex-Navy and old sailors, swear like crazy, but should have been past retirement. They'd fallen off roofs several times in servicing this park, and probably should have had all sorts of lawsuits. But you know, they figured that because they were past retirement, they were given this job, that they probably shouldn't be the squeaky wheel to get the oil. I really like these people; they seem like nice people. But yeah, probably a fair bit of physical pain and not really being acknowledged by the powers that be, the system in place, accountability, if you will. And anyway, having fallen off the roof a few times, I really like these people. Not because they fall off roofs, but just because I chatted with them, maybe in therapy, in my breaks. I can sit there and either eat quietly, or I can go and engage with people and find out a little bit more about others. That's what I would do. And I made friends. And some of these friends I made were one of them in particular travelled overseas multiple times and knew a lot of these musicians involved in this big taiko drumming production that was going to come to our country. And it was going to play in Wollongong, I think, or a village down the road, might be a city down the road from the city I was in. And it was going to mean all sorts of, there was a little bit of an infrastructure change for going to see this play. You know, it was probably going to go to late at night, and these boys wanted to possibly drink. So, in fact, that's probably a good bit of the story. So we organise accommodation, and we go as a group, right, to go see this taiko drumming. And their attitude for where we should stay was the Nantian Temple. It's the biggest, at the time I think it was the biggest Buddhist temple in the Southern Hemisphere. That does make sense. In Australia, maybe, I don't know. But it was huge, and their attitude for going there was it was 5-star accommodation. And it's like, but like, and literally, they just did not get out of the experience the same thing I got out of the experience, right? So we pulled into this place, and I'm raised purely Christian, you know. And we drive into this place, and there's this little pond in this little common green, and around it is a road, right? And that road is where your car comes in and pulls up at the front of this accommodation, and then pulls out again. And the accommodation's separate to the temple. And when you stay there, you're considered as one of the people of said temple. So you can go and you can join in on the monks meditating, and you can join in on all sorts of things that are happening. And for some, that's a double-edged sword, because it means at meal times there's no speech. You know, you go to the food hall and you get your food, and it's absolute quiet time. You know, and so you sort of got to live the monk lifestyle for a day or so, if you will, without any of the penance or giving up, I guess, a lifestyle to be there, if you will. It was, I loved it. I fell in love with the place straight away, and I'll tell you why. We pull in, and there's a little pond, and around that pond, and no word of a lie, was a duck, a cat, and a snake, all within 2 metres of each other. And these weren't domesticated, or maybe the cat was fed, maybe with scraps. And I asked straight away, the hotel staff when they were checking us in. I said, "Is that what's going on out there, man? There's those animals typically wouldn't hang out together at all. Like what's